Hi everyone, this is Sarah Parker at The Fit Cookie, and I wanted to show you, kind of go over and review a little bit my grain mill that I have. I just got this one for Christmas, and this one is a L'Equip, however you say that, NutriMill. So this one is really nice. I'll go over some of the features in this one. This one has, right off the bat, you'll notice it has a motor speed adjustment knob. And this one just adjusts the speed of the motor and kind of helps with determining the coarseness of your flour, coarse or fine. If the motor's running slower, your flour is going to be less fine. It'll be more coarse. This knob is also an on-off knob and the feed rate knob. This determines how fast your grain is going to move through your mill. So the faster it moves through your mill, the coarser it's going to be. This one has a lid on it, so you can put a lid on it as you're grinding your grain, which is kind of nice to help keep the noise down a little bit. It's still really noisy just because it's a mill, but this helps keep the noise down a little bit. Anyways, this has an extension ring for the top, the feed hop. It comes off a little bit difficult here. There we go. This just adds a little bit more of an extension at the top. If you have a lot of grain you're grinding, this just adds a little bit. The feed part of it is not very deep, so this adds a little bit more. It tells you right on the top, do not grind flaxseed or any other oily seeds. We'll kind of go over that later. The back, there's a knob on the back of this. You can twist it and pull it, pop it out. That holds the housing and the motor unit onto the base. So you pull that off, you can pop that right off there. And then you have the base. Then you have the part that holds the flour.
Are you done?
Nope. This is still a little bit sticky because it's new. You can dust that seal with a little bit of flour. So we're just going to pop that off. That seal works pretty good. It's still pretty sticky. If you want to come off easier, you can dust some flour around there. Okay, this cup helps collect some of the really fine dust. Oops. This comes with two different filters. You pop right in there and it helps filter some of the air that comes out. That's going to keep your kitchen from getting really dusty. So this is the tub that collects all the flour. Put that right back on there. Okay, now we're going to put that right back on the base. Has a little notch in there to hold it in place. We're going to take our motor unit, pop it right back on there. There's a place that fits right on there. I'm going to put that back in there, tighten it up. Put it all back together and you're ready. Plug in, you're ready to start grinding your grain. Okay, so you are ready to grind your grain. You just want to make sure that there's a couple things to keep in mind. You want to make sure that your flour or your grain is dry, really dry. Nothing that's kind of damp. It needs to have been dried or roasted. Also keep in mind nothing really oily, nothing nothing with too much fat in it. Flax seeds, not a good thing to put in here. Nuts, no nuts. Anything that you put in here should be really starchy, really dry. I like using the short grain brown rice. Short grain works really well for baked goods. I like the short grain better than long grain rice. It tends to have a little bit more sticky starch in it, so it makes really good baked goods. So you can grind corn, like popcorn in here works really well. Millet, quinoa, beans generally do pretty good. You just have to, with beans and popcorn, large grain, large particles, you really need to watch your feed rate and your motor speed just because of the how big it is. But you kind of run it through a few times and get used to where you want your knobs and adjustments to be. Follow the instructions. There's specific instructions on adjusting this. You want to start fine, and then as you grind, start going coarse. You don't want to start off in a coarse setting right off the bat. This is really easy to take apart and clean. The grind is really nice. It grinds flour pretty comparable to like Bob's Red Mill. Not super fine, but it's really good for just everyday baking and cooking. I use this grind a lot, and I don't have a problem with how coarse it is. So it's nice. I have, this is a little bit of some black rice flour that I ground. That was one of the first things I ground in this. Pretty nice, good texture. Black rice is nice. It kind of gives it a little darker color, almost purple or maroon color. So it's really good. So we'll go ahead and grind some grain while we're at it. You can either start this with the grain in the hopper already, or you can start it and then add the grain. I usually start it and then add the grain to it. So I'll start it first and make sure all my knobs are on the correct setting. This is actually the feed rate is also the on-off knob on this one. So I'm going to start this, add my grain, grind it all, and then we'll look at what we get. This is winding down. You want to make sure that all of your grain gets run through before you shut it off. So, and I completely forgot to put the lid on while we were doing that. Alright, so we're going to open this up. This is going to be a little warm. I put 2 pounds of rice in there, and it took probably 5 or 10 minutes to run through completely. So depending on how fine you have your flour, it can take a little while to grind.
Hey, can I be the dolphin in your play? Yeah.
So sometimes it's a really good idea to, before you open this up, actually just tap this lid
and you have
with a whisk or something to get all that flour off of that. There we have my tub of flour. If you like to freeze your flour or grind it, a good idea is to let it cool off completely before you put it in the freezer or the fridge, because it is kind of warm. It's a little bit moist, Let it get to room temperature before you decide to freeze it. But a good idea now is to get a whisk, just kind of mix it around, whisk it around, and then store it. So there you have a home ground flour.